Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to be doing our special selection for the day. That's where one of you tell me exactly what you want me to check out. If you want to submit your own special selection, you can find the link for it in the description under the video. Today we're going to be checking out a band that we have listened to before. This is Draconian. The request comes from Artist Circle. The song is Dishearten. The first track by them you reacted to is off of their second album with their longtime clean vocalist Lisa Johansson. This one's off of their sixth album, the first one with their new clean vocalist Heikki Longhans. Alright, so I went back, I brushed up a little bit on that other Draconian track we checked out just to get acquainted to their sound and be reminded what kind of music they create. So yeah, I'm ready for this. Let's dive in. Yeah, so we have a triplet feel in the guitars, but we have more of a four feel in the drums. I take that back. There is a triplet in the cymbals. See, now we're really going hard in that 4/4. But there's still that triplet feel between the snare, bass, and cymbal. That was interesting. Yeah, a really nice back and forth there between the harsh and the cleans. Yes, call and response. I was just about to comment on the atmosphere too. Yeah. Yeah, a little bit of that Phrygian mode in there. I don't know if it's full Phrygian, or if it's a modification of Phrygian, maybe? Yeah, interesting decision there in the strings. give that almost like a delayed resolution that actually ends up being a leading tone into the group.
Strange eyes are gazing.
Your hissing, smoldering tongue.
Your reflection is broken.
Yet the mirror is mine.
Interesting, bringing in a little bit of a punk beat in here. Yeah, layering the vocals on top of the guitar to really combine those textures. Great choice. Yeah, and we're seeing triplets here as well, although they're triplet quarter notes now. Also really interesting there. I'm going to back this up just 5 seconds maybe. Yeah, so the cymbal hits there on the triplets, like ka 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 ka, they're being panned. Interesting choice. I don't know that it really adds much, but my attention was called to it, and I suppose that that's worth doing it in the first place. Yeah, so Draconian lines up a lot with some of the comments I had on their previous track, but let's dive into this and see some of the stuff that I thought was pretty interesting. Alright, so a vast portion of this track is very isolating. I think if you go back and listen, there's a lot of sections that it's not that they don't have a lot of instrumentation going on, but it's that they don't have a lot of instrumentation in contrast to the larger sections. You look at the ending, or the part where the growls and the cleans are going back and forth. Those parts are extremely wide, they're extremely large. We have the full metal bands, and then there's some strings going on around that. And it's just produced to be this extremely wide sound. So when we get to some of these sparser sections, even though we do have the strings and the vocalist and drumming and maybe a guitar, like it's still fairly full here. It's also produced to be a little quieter. And I don't think that's necessary. I wasn't watching the audio levels, but I don't think it's necessarily quieter volume-wise, but it feels quieter, it sounds quieter, it's produced to give a quieter element to it. So we get a lot of moments where the vocalists seem to be in a place where they're by themselves. And again, I want to mention it's not because it's just isolated. It's not like it's just a vocalist and a piano or something like that. But it just, in contrast to the large moments, we have a lot of these smaller moments throughout. And I think that's real important to the themes going on in here, which we'll talk about later. Now, also, I want to bring up the use of guitar versus strings. This is something that I feel like I bring up often whenever we talk about symphonic metal bands. There tends to be two camps here that are widely used. One is to play a metal song and then just put chords on your strings behind it or around it. And the other is to write really great classical music on the strings and then have your guitars do something textural. There are very few bands, I think, that toe the line very well of incorporating both the instrumentation of an orchestra with the sound of metal and bringing them together in a way where both can shine. And I think this one bounces back and forth between the two. There are sections in this track where it is pure metal, and then we have that string element going on behind it. And then we also have some elements where the strings are front and center. They have some nice lines going about in the melody, especially when we look at the violins. And the guitars are mostly bringing that distorted, overdriven edge to the sound. So it's interesting to see both of these ideas being used, but never really the song coming together into a whole where both of these sides are treated equally. And like I said, that's a rarity anyways. I don't really think it's too much of a negative. It's not criticism against Draconian. It's just a trend I've noticed with a lot of bands that utilize strings, specifically strings. Sometimes we get some brass in there as well. There are very few bands that use full orchestral sounds, bringing in woodwinds and auxiliary percussion as well. It usually is just the strings, or maybe the strings and some brass, maybe a tuba and trumpet, but yeah, it's usually just not. There's no woodwind really in a lot of symphonic metal, which is weird because it's got symphonic right there in the name. Anyways, I'm a bit off topic here. So yeah, it's not a slight against Draconian that I'm bringing this up. It's just a trend in the genre. But there are a few bands that have found a great way to merge these two together. Stuff like Dimmu Borgir and completely blanking out on that other one. But they're not symphonic metal. Typically, it's more extreme metals with symphonic elements in it. Back to Draconian though. So yeah, and I think it's interesting to note when these changes happen. Usually, the strings are given prominence in these more isolated sections, like I mentioned. And once we start getting to more of the bombastic elements of the track, that's when we see the guitars start taking front and center, and the strings are played more for the atmosphere. I don't think that was a mistake. I think it does play to both of their strengths. Electric guitars can be vulnerable, they can be isolating. Strings can definitely be bombastic and large, but I think that electric guitars, especially metal guitars, the tone and texture they have just lend themselves more naturally to it. And string sections do lend themselves more naturally, I think, to having this more pensive, somber element to them. So they really just played into the strengths of these instruments and used the voices where they would best be accommodated. I do want to praise the vocals though, both of them actually. I don't usually give praise to growls. Usually it's like they're there, it was fine. I don't have anything, I don't have a problem with them. They existed. But no, right here I think that there's some really great production and vocal projection in the growls. They were very clear and concise. There's some good enunciation on the syllables. For the most part, I could understand the words that were being said. And then, of course, the clean vocals, they're just gorgeous. They work very well with the chords and textures that they've created with the song. I like the ways that it was layered with the guitar in a couple of places to bring that crunch, that metal edge, texturally lining up with the vocals and creating that textural layer. Really nice job there. I think I said that about the last time we talked about Draconian as well. They have a knack for that, I suppose. Doing these textural layers, and I really enjoy it. It's not the only instrument they do. I think there was I think there was a moment where the rhythmic element of the growls was lining up with the bass guitar at one point. And then the strings and guitars are seen several times playing the same melody. So they do this thing they commonly do this thing where they layer textures. So instead of harmonizing two instruments, they play the exact same notes, the exact same rhythms, and you get that nice blending of their textures, of their timbres, into a singular sound. Um, and we can't not address time signature, meter. This is a strange one. The song constantly dances between 4/4 and 6/8, and I'm not sure which one it is in, and honestly, it really doesn't matter because the feeling and flow of the song is identical in either of them. It just changes how it's written on the paper. However, I'm going to approach this from 4/4 with a triplet feel, and I think that's going to work best. It's interesting to see how, when, and in what manner the song decides to slip between these two modes. We start out with a heavy 6/8 feel, which is based on just a lot of triplet usage all over the place. And even without any strong notion of rhythmic pulse at the beginning, we don't have a percussive instrument coming in yet. The opening minute or so of the song, maybe like 30 seconds of the song, really drives home the 6/8 feel. What's interesting though is we get some guitar chords coming in, we get the drums coming in, and you can listen on the snare and the bass that they're emphasizing a 4 feeling. Same with the chords. But there's one cymbal that is still on that triplet feel. And it's really interesting to see that in almost any aspect of this track, the 4 and the 6 are both present simultaneously. Usually both within the drums. So you're getting both of these, you're getting this polymetric idea in the drums constantly throughout this entire track. There was a really cool part somewhere in the middle when it felt like everybody went to 4/4, but if you listen to the bass kick, the snare, and a cymbal, not sure what cymbal it was, they're doing triplet quarter notes. Which, of course, the triplet quarter note is that same slowed down beat feeling that we saw at the end of the track, where it feels like 4/4, but it just slows down a little bit. That's going to be your triplet quarter note. It's the final sound that we hear in this song. If you go back and listen, there's a bit of a sort of a mini hocket happening in the drum kit with this triplet in it, even though everything else is 4/4. I thought everything shifted to 4/4. I thought it was honestly the first time that we had heard a moment where we weren't getting this dual meter idea. And no, it was actually still, the triplet feel was still in there. It was just kind of buried a little bit inside of these three different ideas. And you really have to listen to the three of them bouncing back and forth. So yeah, it's ever present in this song. And at first I thought it was just a neat little idea, because honestly, how many times have I brought this up? Triplets in 4/4 or dotted quarters in 6/8. This is something I feel like I bring up at least once a week. It shows up so often in music that at this point it's just become a part of a part of metal. But here I think at least it has purpose. If we pull up the lyrics, there's this concept, and I think this is where I'm going to finally start transitioning my analysis talk into thematic concepts rather than just strictly talking about the subjective part, the objective part of the music. Actually, no, take that back. 1 second. I do want to talk about production first, real quick, before we dive into tying up the music and the lyrics. There is this really interesting thing going on in the drum production all over the place. Wild panning. The panning seems to change on every beat. And we saw this at the end I think it was the cymbals during those quarter note triplets, cymbal, 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 and they're changing sides every time. And it's this sort of warbling effect. It's like it's like the a really fast opposite of a Doppler effect, where the Doppler effect is hearing the sound move from one side to the other. Actually, Doppler effect would also imply volume, though, so it's not technically a Doppler effect, but I'm going to continue to calling that just because I don't have a better term at the moment. Hearing the sound go from one side to the other. This is just like a teleporting. It's here, it's here, it's here, it's here. This happens everywhere, though. Middle of the track, maybe? Beginning of the track? I don't remember. The toms were doing this. There was a tom run, and instead of hearing the sounds move from left to right as we go from higher to lower, which is how drums are typically mixed, maybe it's right to left, I don't know. Either way, when you go from high to lower on toms, most of the time in a modern production, you're going to pan from one side to the other. And instead, we're panning back and forth, where each hit is on a different side. So while the notes of the toms are decreasing, we're going down in pitch. Instead of going across the panning, it's just bouncing back and forth. And it makes me wonder, because this was, I think there was a third time I heard this, but I wasn't quite sure because it was buried. I think it was one of the larger sections, so I wasn't sure if it was just something about the way things were being layered that I was hearing it. But now that I noticed that it also happened at the end, I think that there was at least a third part. Maybe there's more of this idea of reflective audio, where it sort of gets to a point, especially on some of these faster rhythms, where it feels like it's in both places at once. It's really weird, but stay with me here. So we're going to move into connecting all of this into the lyrical themes and how they support and buttress each other. Also, I say buttress a lot because I really enjoy the word. I think it's a nice way to say support, but also it's funny because it's got the word but in it. So this song is about ghosts, I think. We have somebody who is on the other side of something. They can look in, and the person they're looking in at is sad over them. Now, maybe there is more of a rooted, grounded story, narrative element that this might work in. Maybe it could be the death of a relationship and somebody is being a creep and peering in through windows at this other person all the time. I mean, I suppose that works too. I'm kind of moving away from that creepy element, though, of stalking and looking at this from a more supernatural area where we have somebody who's passed on and their spirit lingers and they're watching their loved ones have a tough, or loved one possibly, have a tough time dealing with the loss of this person. So we have this concept of the invisible barrier, two sides of reality, the mortal plane and the spiritual plane, both possibly existing simultaneously. And there is even a line in here, something about reflections and mirrors. Like this concept of reflective elements even comes up in the lyrics themselves. So what I really love is how the music embodies some of this. We have a person or two people who were together and possibly felt more complete being in the same realm. Now we have them split. They're both isolated in their respective realms, but they're also around each other all the time, it seems. The spirit is following the mortal person and viewing their depression through this plane mirror. The mirror that allows them to see across planes. Whatever. We have this concept of duality, of isolation, and I absolutely love how the music ties into this. We have the drums all over the place. Well, at least in two or three places anyways. This constant panning back and forth where it feels like the drums are trying to exist in two places at once. The panning doesn't feel natural. So, like I said, not sure Not like I said, like I always say, I'm not sure if any of this is intentional. This is where we start moving from the objective realities of the music, where I talk about specific things happening, to the subjective context. Me trying to piece together some things. I could be way off here, and maybe the producer is just having a bit of fun and said, I'm tired of doing the fill across the panning. We're just going to bounce back and forth and be a little different. Um, but I do see some connective tissues here. I may be off, but this is my experience, my interpretation. So stick along with me on this ride if you think I'm wrong. I might be going places. So yeah, there's this duality there. And then, like I said, the song moves between these moments of isolation, which typically have one vocalist, to these large bombastic sections, which have two vocalists. And I think the cool thing is, we're not going to get there yet. Definitely something very cool, though. So we have, like I said, these moments of isolation. This would be where one person feels alone on one side, one plane of this reality. But I absolutely love when we get these moments of overlapping vocals, or the call and response that we saw at one point in time, where these two people are so close musically. Their voices are so close to being with each other, but they're just out of sync. They're not in the same plane. Now, again, I could be way off on this, but I absolutely love the way that this music lines up imagery that works with the lyrics that are going on. I think that's it, actually. But it is really cool, this idea of being out of sync, being so close that possibly even I'm looking at it, this idea of two planes separated by this wall, this supernatural wall. But also, if we look about it in the way that ghosts and spirits are typically showcased in Hollywood, where they are physically, or visually at least to us, in the same plane, and they can pass through mortal objects, you can see how two people might be exhibiting the same physical space. They might be present in the same physical space, but because they're in two different planes, they're out of sync with each other. They're together, but they're not. And I absolutely love that. Plus, the song is just overall, there's a lot of themes of just sadness. The atmosphere is just very bleak, and I don't want to say the melancholy, I think, is a good one. And it goes along with a lot of these words that are about just being sad about somebody not being here anymore. There is one thing that I want to bring up, and I'm not sure what it has anything to do with, which is why I've held on to it to the end. The whole song seems to be written with a melancholic chord progression to it. Not sure what key they're in, not sure what mode they're in, but it really deals with this pensive, sad, weighty kind of feeling, and it works perfect. But there's one moment that shows up twice where we get this Phrygian style feel to the music. And I don't think it's full on Phrygian. Like I said, it doesn't quite have that stereotypically Middle Eastern kind of feeling to it. But it's like 3 or 4 notes that feel Phrygian packed around something that feels more minor. And I'm not sure what that what that collection of notes is called, but I do not understand how those 4 Phrygian notes fit into everything else. They feel very detracted from the rest of the song. They're immediately noticeable by me. They every time they come up, I'm like, oh yeah, I really like that. What's it doing here though? And I wish I knew where that note was, because there's also growling with it. It only comes up with the growling. It's a specific section. I'm curious what those lyrics are, and possibly what it might mean in the larger picture, assuming all of this thought went into making the music and lyrics line up so well. But yeah, it always kind of took me out of the moment. I was like, yeah, I love Phrygian mode. I really do. It's a fantastic mode of writing music. But I don't feel like it has any need here other than the raw aspect of contrast, and I don't even think it does a great job at doing that, especially when there's so many more elements of contrast here between the different vocal styles, the volumes, the widths, the amounts of layering between different sections. Like, the song is full of contrasting elements. It really doesn't need 2 bars of this odd key signature or mode, depending on what it is. So yeah, it's just I don't know, man. I got nothing on that. I just want to point it out because it intrigues me. If I ever got a chance to talk to them, that'd be my first question: is what's going on at minute 2:15 or whatever of this track, and why did you decide to put that in there? And then once they answer that, I'll walk away because I don't know. That was not a great joke. I thought it was gonna be funnier when I said it in my head. This is why live's weird. Okay, let's finish this up. I got nothing else to say about this track. This is where you guys come in. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you thought of Draconian's Dishearten. Let me know if you agree with anything that I said, if you disagree with everything. I don't know. If you enjoyed this or not, if anything that stood out to you that maybe you want to bring up. Hey, Bryan, you didn't talk about this, and I thought it was super important. Yeah, put that stuff in the comments. We'll have a conversation about it. Always love that. When you're done commenting, you head up to the description box. In there is a link for Linktree. Take you to this joint right here. It is a menu with everything related to the channel as well as me. You can support the channel through Patreon, where you also get to vote on future themes and topics. You can submit your own special selection. You can follow me on Twitter. You can join the Discord community and chat with other music lovers. I really got to figure out a better phrase for it. Music people. I don't know. Anyways, lots of stuff in there. Go ahead and check it out. Above the description box, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all 3 of those. That does it for today. We'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC. We'll have another cover, the original. And then on Thursday, we'll look at the cover of that one. We're going to be looking at very popular Hurt. So tomorrow we'll be looking at 9 Inch Nails. Thursday we'll be looking at Johnny Cash. Yeah. And then, of course, special selection after that, as usual. All right, until next time, remember to be critical but not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.